June 26, 1943, late afternoon over occupied France near Furlio. Lieutenant Robert Johnson sat tensely in the cockpit of his P-47 Thunderbolt, eyes fixed on the retreating formation of B-17 bombers turning for home after their mission to Villa-Cubel airfield near Paris. At just 23, Johnson had been in combat for barely 2 months. He had one confirmed kill to his name, achieved 13 days earlier over the Netherlands, and now he faced a trial that would test both man and machine to their absolute limits. Beneath him was the P-47 Thunderbolt, an aircraft many questioned, a fighter so massive it defied the common expectations of what a single-engine warplane should be. Empty, it weighed over 10,000 pounds. Fully loaded it tipped the scales at 17,500. Its heart was a roaring 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp radial engine, armed with 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns, fast in a straight line, deadly at altitude, and nearly unstoppable in a dive. Yet despite all its power, the P-47 had a fatal flaw. It couldn't turn with German fighters. The agile Focke-Wulf 190 and Messerschmitt Bf 109 could slice through the sky with tight, razor-sharp turns that left the Thunderbolt lumbering, a slow and vulnerable target in a horizontal dogfight. Doctrine dictated that American pilots avoid such fights, to dive, strike, and climb back out, to use speed and altitude rather than the nimbleness their enemy possessed. Johnson had tried to follow these rules since his first mission in April, but combat was rarely neat. The Germans understood the Thunderbolt's weaknesses and knew how to exploit them. The 8th Air Force had already paid a grim price, losing pilots who trusted their aircraft, and the doctrine, to keep them alive. Johnson had watched comrades die. The official reports often blamed pilot error, but the surviving men knew the reality. War was chaotic, merciless, and the rules sometimes dissolved in fire and bullets. At 19,000 feet, 48 P-47s from the 56th Fighter Group scoured the sky in loose formation, providing cover for the retreating bombers. Johnson flew the tail-end Charlie position, last in line, the most vulnerable spot in the squadron's formation, usually assigned to newer pilots. His eyes swept the skies, searching for dark specks that betrayed enemy fighters diving from above. The sun hung low in the west, casting blinding reflections that made ambushes almost inevitable. And then he saw them, 16 Focke-Wulf 190s from the second group of Fighter Wing 26, diving from 25,000 feet, approaching fast, ruthless, precise. Johnson keyed his radio to warn his flight leader, but before he could finish, the first German opened fire. 20mm cannon shells tore through the P-47's fuselage, shattering the canopy, spraying glass and plexiglass shards into his face. Hydraulic fluid burned his eyes, a bullet nicked his nose and destroyed his oxygen mask, another tore into his right leg. Fire erupted around him. The massive fighter snapped into an inverted spin, and Johnson's world became a blur of metal, fire, and chaos. Without hydraulics, the canopy wouldn't budge, trapping him in a tumbling, burning aircraft, and for a moment, he simply accepted death. Then, as if by a miracle, the fire starved of oxygen died. Johnson kicked the rudder, pulled back on the stick, and the Thunderbolt steadied itself. He was flying level again at 8,000 feet, half-blind, bleeding, and without functional hydraulics, but alive. The Pratt & Whitney engine still roared, still produced thrust, still defied all odds. The reprieve was brief. A German fighter appeared alongside him, flying formation close enough to see the surprise in Johnson's eyes. The German had exhausted his cannon ammo and now relied on machine guns, but even at close range, they tore into the Thunderbolt. Hundreds of rounds slammed into the fuselage, wings, and tail. Johnson hunched behind his armored seatback, enduring the onslaught, feeling his aircraft shudder under the punishment. The German executed multiple attack runs, sweeping bullets across every vital system, yet the P-47 continued to fly. 5 passes, dozens of holes, hundreds of rounds, and still it held together. Eventually, the German ran out of ammunition, pulled alongside Johnson one final time, and rocked his wings, a silent acknowledgement of the Thunderbolt's toughness and the pilot's survival. Johnson limped his crippled fighter across the English Channel, blinded and bleeding, landing at RAF Manston without gear or flaps, sliding across the grass until finally he stopped. Ground crews pried him from the cockpit, shaking and in shock, trying to comprehend the sheer number of bullet holes that had riddled the aircraft. It was a total loss, yet it had carried him home. Johnson's survival on that day became a testament to both the Thunderbolt's durability and the resilience of its pilots. The same mission claimed the life of Lieutenant Roger Deere, Johnson's classmate from training, shot down over France. Combat could be mercilessly random, separating life from death by mere seconds, by chance, by the unforgiving realities of aerial warfare. The 56th Fighter Group had learned these lessons the hard way, enduring losses and refining tactics that would eventually turn the P-47 from a heavy jug into a weapon feared by the Luftwaffe. Training at Bridgeport had been brutal, testing pilots against an unfamiliar and unforgiving aircraft. Many didn't survive. Yet those who did, like Deere and Johnson, emerged sharper, braver, and more capable of exploiting the Thunderbolt's true potential. By late 1943, the Thunderbolt's advantages became apparent. At altitude, it outpaced any German fighter. Its dive speed was unmatched, and its 850 caliber machine guns could unleash destruction in fleeting moments. Leaders like Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke encouraged pilots to innovate, to adapt doctrine to the realities of combat. Pilots learned to press attacks, to climb, to turn when conditions allowed, and to trust their aircraft to absorb damage. The P-47's toughness instilled a psychological edge. Pilots knew they could survive hits that would destroy other fighters, and that confidence changed the nature of engagements. Johnson himself would later score his 5th confirmed kill against one of Germany's top aces, Hans Philipp, illustrating that skill and tactics could triumph over raw aircraft maneuverability. The 56th Fighter Group became legendary, flying only P-47s and scoring over 600 aerial victories. 17 pilots became aces, 3 double aces. Robert Johnson himself tallied 27 confirmed kills. The Thunderbolt's raw, brutish design, once criticized as ungainly, proved that power and durability could dominate the skies. And when the P-51 Mustang eventually assumed the primary long-range escort role, P-47s transitioned to ground attack, where they wreaked havoc on German logistics. They destroyed trains, trucks, armored vehicles, supply depots, and airfields, crippling the enemy's ability to sustain the front. Pilots faced danger from anti-aircraft fire, yet the Thunderbolt's rugged airframe, air-cooled radial engine, and heavy armament allowed them to return home from missions that would have destroyed lighter aircraft. Robert Johnson survived the war, completing 91 combat missions, earning the Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medals, and a Purple Heart. He returned to civilian life quietly, but never forgot the day his Thunderbolt survived over 200 machine gun hits and 20 cannon shells. His story, and the story of the 56th Fighter Group, demonstrates that the P-47's success was not due to beauty, speed, or agility, but to understanding, adaptation, and trust. Pilots learned to fight with the aircraft they had, exploiting its strengths, mitigating its weaknesses, and turning an initially doubted fighter into a legend. The P-47 Thunderbolt continued to serve after the war, with air forces across South America, Europe, and Asia, influencing post-war aircraft design philosophies that emphasized ruggedness, firepower, and survivability over sheer maneuverability. Its legacy can be seen in jets like the F-84 Thunderjet, the F-100 Super Sabre, the A-10 Warthog, and others that followed the same principles: big, powerful, heavily armed, and capable of taking a beating while delivering it back. The lessons of the Thunderbolt endure. Equipment alone does not win wars. People, leadership, training, innovation, and courage do. The P-47 Thunderbolt, once derided as a lumbering jug, proved to be one of the most faithful and effective American fighters of World War II, a machine that brought its pilots home when nothing else could, and a symbol of what determination and ingenuity can achieve in the chaos of combat.